Here are 10 things I wish I knew earlier in college recruiting. And if I had known these things, then my process probably would have been a lot smoother. It would have been a lot faster. And it would have been a lot less stressful. And I would have gotten more interest in offers. So I want to share with you what those 10 things are so that hopefully your process goes a lot smoother than mine did the first time through. Okay. So the first thing is that college coaches don't recruit players that they like and want. Okay. They actually recruit players based on the positions and graduation classes that they need. So college coaches don't go out and look for the best players. That's not what they do. They look at their own roster and they say, where are the gaps? Where are the holes in the roster? What do we need to fill? What is going to help us round out our team? And then they take the needs that they have and they go find the best players to fill those positions. And so you could be the best player in the country. Your kid could be the best player in the country. But if you're contacting a school that doesn't need your position in grad class, they're not going to respond, right? And there's no perfect way to know whether someone needs your position in grad class, but it's just important to understand that college coaches don't recruit based on want, they recruit based on need. Okay. The second thing is that video is the single most important part of recruiting. There is nothing in college recruiting that is as important as video. Okay. It is the evidence that your kid truly is a good player. And looking back, I wish I had 10 times more video than I had. In high school, I had very little video, and it made it incredibly challenging to get interest. Like, I got very little interest in high school. And then when I got to junior college and I figured out how the recruiting process actually works, I got a lot more interest. Why? Because I got a lot more video. And I still wish, even though I got a lot of video in junior college, I'd gotten more, like getting as much video as you possibly can. I can't tell you how much of a hack that is in the recruiting process. It's like, well, how much video do I need? As much as you can get. Remember, it is the evidence that you truly are a good player. If you have two players who are exactly the same in every single category, right? They're the same height, same weight, same grades, same skill set, literally the exact same players. They are clones, but one player has 5 videos and the other has 50. Which player is a coach going to feel more confident recruiting? The player with more video. So you want to be that player. If you're a parent, you want your kid to be that player. So video is the single most important part of college recruiting. Number 3, coaches attend showcases and camps largely to watch players that they've already communicated with or heard of. I was super confused in high school when I was a good player and I'd show up to a showcase or camp and I played really well and I got no interest from it. And there were other players at that camp who were talking to college coaches, and it was like they knew each other. And I was like, what's going on here? I don't understand how this works. And what had happened was they had been communicating with that coach before the camp or showcase. So when they showed up, guess who the coach was watching? It wasn't me. It was that player. And this is happening all the time, more often than not, at these events. So if you're not in communication with college coaches before those events, it's more likely than not that you won't be in communication with them after them. You have to go into those events with some interest, with some conversations, with some relationships to truly make the most of those recruiting events. Number 4, email works, but it requires much higher volume than I thought. Email is a great way to generate interest in the recruiting process. Even today, in 2024, email is a really good way to get on college coaches' radars. But now in 2024, it requires much higher volume than it did, 10, 20, 30 years ago. Okay. And so you absolutely should use email and it works, but you have to do so much more volume than you did before. Like 20 emails, not going to cut it. Like, it's just not going to. You might get lucky, but if you're not trying to rely on luck and you want to put yourself or your kid in the best position to succeed, then you have to send email at high volume. Number 5, following up with college coaches is not annoying if you do it right. I remember thinking, if I follow up with coaches, they're just going to be annoyed and then they're going to stop recruiting me. And sure, if you continue following up with a coach who did not express interest and you're emailing them 10, 20 times, you're probably annoying them. But if a coach has shown interest in you, then following up with them is actually not annoying, it's helpful, because otherwise you're putting the entire burden of communication on them. Imagine that you have a friend, right? And in that friendship, you have to reach out to that friend every single time that you want to talk on the phone or hang out. Maybe you've had friendships like this. Are they healthy? No. Is that a lot of work for you? Yes. The best friendships or where both parties are reaching out to and engaging with one another. And so you cannot put the entire burden of communication on college coaches. You have to bear some of that burden too. And so when you do follow-ups right, you're not annoying them. You're actually making their life easier. Number 6, depending on your sport, okay, full rides are, rare. Getting a full ride scholarship is actually pretty rare. It depends on your sport. If you're a football player, probably not so rare, right? For most other sports, you're probably not going to get a full ride scholarship. And I didn't understand this. I thought, I got a 50% scholarship. That's like half of what I was expecting. But really, a 50% scholarship in most sports is a really good scholarship. Even 25%. Never take for granted any scholarship. Anytime they are going to give you money to play for their school, that's a big deal. And I just didn't understand that full rides were uncommon. Like, that's not usually part of the process for most kids in most sports. Of course, there are exceptions, but I wish I had known that. Number 7, academics matter a lot more than I thought. I used to think that all athletes could just have whatever grades they wanted, and if they were good enough, they would get in. And that's just not true. Of course, there are always outliers, but for most players, you have to be at least close in terms of the academic threshold in order to get into a school. And some schools are going to budge more than others, right? Like, there might be a school who has a minimum GPA of a 3.3 and you have a 3.1 and they're like, yeah, we'll let you in, right? Or it could be an Ivy League situation where they say minimum GPA is a 4.0 and you say, I have a 3.9, and they say, sorry, we can't do anything about that, right? And so grades not only can save you thousands of dollars because you could get academic scholarships, which I didn't know, and you can combine them sometimes, depending on the division and the school, you can combine them with athletic scholarships, right? Which then could get you a full ride, 50% athletic, 50% academic. That's a great deal. And I didn't know that. And so those academic scholarships are a big deal, and they can also just open up a lot of doors. If a coach knows that they don't have to worry about academics for a kid, that's a big deal. Right? That's a really big deal because that's an obstacle that they don't have to worry about. Now it's really just, is the kid good enough for my school, right? Are they good enough for my school, and are they a good culture fit? And so academics matter so much more than I thought. And they're getting actually more and more competitive because grades, if you look at the average GPA in high schools nowadays, it's significantly higher than it used to be. And so academics are getting more and more competitive. And so they're really important in today's recruiting process. Number 8, most travel and club coaches are not nearly as connected as they say they are. So you should never rely on them, even if they're good people. Listen, your travel or club coach has probably told you, hey, I know some college coaches. I'm going to get them to come out to our games. I'm going to get you connected with them. But the fact is, most of these travel or club coaches do not have a whole bunch of connections. They might have 5, like maybe, right? They might even have 10, but they're not going to have like 50. And even if they do have a bunch of connections, they're not going to make 50 calls on your behalf. Like, they just have a whole organization of players who are expecting the same thing from them. And there's not enough hours in the day. They're just not going to do that for you. And so you cannot rely on them to generate interest for you. They can provide some referrals or recommendations sometimes. That's great. But we can't rely on them to generate a whole bunch of interest for us, even if they're good people. I'm not saying that they're bad people. I definitely would say that it's not a good thing if they're promising that they're going to do that for you and they don't do it. But I would say that it's entirely possible that a coach is a good person and really cares about your future, but just doesn't have the bandwidth to go contact a bunch of coaches for you. And so that's where you can't rely on those people. You have to take the process into your own hands. Number 9, it is much easier to zag when everyone else zigs than to try and zig better than everyone else. Here's my point. It is much easier, and I wish I had known this, it is much easier to do something different than what everyone else is doing to get noticed, rather than do what everyone else is doing and just try to do it better than them. That is really hard to do. And you can't do this for everything in the process. Sometimes you really do just have to do what everyone else is doing and do it better than them. But when you get an opportunity to zag and do something different than what everyone else is doing, you have to take advantage of that, because it's so much easier to stand out when you're doing something different rather than when you're trying to do something better. And I wish I had known that, and I didn't follow the crowd, and I did something different, because I probably would have had a lot more interest in offers than I got in high school. And when I finally did zag in junior college, that's when the floodgates opened and I got a ton of offers. So hopefully you could do the same. And then number 10, no one is coming to save you. Like, you have to decide if your current recruiting pain is bad enough to make a change. And if it's not bad enough yet, if you're like, well, we're not in that much recruiting pain, then maybe you have to hit rock bottom before you choose to actually make a change. I recommend against it, but I see that for a lot of families, right? But the fact is, no one is coming to save you. College coaches are not just going to stumble across your kid. You can keep hoping and praying that that's going to happen, but it's probably not going to happen. Like, no one is coming to save you. You have to go make this happen. You have to go generate interest out of thin air. You have to decide that it's finally time to take action and do something different than what you're currently doing if you don't like the results that you currently have, right? Because no one's coming to save you. You have to save yourself. So hopefully these 10 insights help you in your recruiting process. I'll leave some resources down below in the description, and I'll see you guys next time.